Welcome to the Sixcast, a podcast where we discuss real-world strategies, tips, and stories that provide helpful insights for your digital transformation experience.
I had a 32-year career at Torstar, had 16 different jobs. As you mentioned, I got into digital in 1995. And I was very intentional as I moved into this stage. And I created what I call my purposeful portfolio of joy. And like the world is so complicated. And that's why I find frameworks are useful, right? They can guide you. And it's this really cool intersection of, what do you love, what the world needs, what you can be paid for, and what you're good at. And for me, I am at that stage.
She has shaped industries, mentored leaders, and guided organizations through disruption long before digital transformation became a buzzword. Welcome back to Sixcast. Today's episode is special. I'm joined by someone who has led transformation through some of the biggest shifts in Canadian business across media, digital, and now in the boardroom. She has over 3 decades of leadership across Torstar group of companies, being the chief of staff at some point, and as well being this SVP for strategy and transformation, and being the chief operating officer as well. Beside that, she has also serviced and still servicing at numerous boards. She's sitting on the boards of Corby Wines and Spirits, Strathmore Landscape Management, and many more. And most importantly, this is something close to my heart. She's the president of Schulich Global Alumni Network. She has shaped industries, mentored leaders, and guided organizations through disruption long before digital transformation became a buzzword. Today, we have Pam Laycock on our show. Pam, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me, and I should bring you along as my personal cheerleader everywhere I go.
I love to be. Pam, to get started, I always ask this question from the podcast attendees who are successful professionals, succeeded in their lives in general. It's a loaded question. So tell me a bit about yourself. There could be a lot of things that you've done beside what I've said. How's your life journey so far? And what feels like your purpose at this stage of your life and career?
Well, I'm going to try to keep this short because the interesting thing is I've done a lot of interesting and different things. And I've gone through a lot of change in my career. But interestingly, it started when I was young. My family used to move every 2 years. And we moved across Canada. My father was in sales for Coca-Cola. And as he rose, we moved. And my life still moves in 2-year cycles to this day. So I had a 32-year career at Torstar, had 16 different jobs. So every 2 years, something new to do, which was amazing experience. As you mentioned, I got into digital in 1995. So way back at the beginning, Mosaic, all that kind of stuff. Very, very early days. Interesting and fun. And I've had the privilege of serving on 9 different boards. So real interesting mix of what I've done. And I think what I would do is just to keep us moving, I'll speak to like my purpose now. So I'm at the stage that I am rewiring what I'm doing next. And I've been in my rewiring stage for about 2 years now. And I was very intentional as I moved into this stage. And I created what I call my purposeful portfolio of joy. And let me just explain that to you for a second, because it sets up the rest of the conversation, I think. Purposeful meaning everything I do, I choose to do must be with some kind of purpose and value for myself and for whatever and whoever I'm, putting my attention to. Portfolio, as you can see, also 32 years, 16 jobs, 2-year cycles. I have a short attention span. I like to do a lot of different things. So I'm at this stage where the portfolio, I have this really nice mix of things. And you talked about a couple of things. My work with Schulich, my work with various boards, and mentoring. So a nice mix of things. And then joy. Thirdly, joy. I am very fortunate that I can choose to only do things that bring me joy. And that's really important to me. And we'll talk about that maybe at some point. But I'll raise the concept now of ikigai. And that is very much a Japanese concept, which means your reason for being. And it's this really cool intersection of, what do you love, what the world needs, what you can be paid for, and what you're good at. And for me, I am at that stage.
Interesting. You talked about you having a short attention span. Is it true for most business leaders? I do have the same.
Yeah,
I
isn't that
consider that an
interesting?
issue as well for me sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, and I think I see it as a good thing because it
Okay.
means you want to be on to the next thing. You want to grow, you want the organization to grow, right?
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
that's a good thing. Now, it's an interesting, and I spent 32 years figuring out the balance between the legacy and innovation, right?
Mhm.
And there's value in the legacy,
Mm.
and how do you keep that moving? But how do you actually intersect that? And we'll probably get at that a bit later in the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. And you said that you reinvented yourself across publishing, media, digital transformation, e-commerce, and education, as well governance. How did you keep reinventing yourself? I think you partially answered that question. What allowed you to keep confidently stepping into new arenas? It could be scary at times.
Right,
Uh, I did math and physics. I had no marketing or strategy background,
right,
and I'm currently not quite in strategy. I'm in technology,
yeah.
but I intertwine strategy and
Hmm.
technology together. But my learning as doing my undergrad, doing physics and math, I feel it really helps.
Yeah,
How how did you have that confidence in
yeah.
stepping into different areas in the job and the company?
Hmm. It's interesting. I think, partly it's the foundation I received in my upbringing, and that change is just part of who we are and what we do, right? So I had that going in. And as a result, I love to operate in what I call green fields. So, and it started in my early career at Harlequin, and they threw me into a lot of new business development, new product development. There were new rules, and you had to figure it out. And then into the internet early, right? Every time I'm into something new, I'm not afraid of the no path to follow. I help create the path, and that's exciting. And I think it comes down to also a lot of curiosity, right? I just love to try new things. I love to learn new things. And I think that's important. And I would say, along with that, there's a couple of, I think, foundational frameworks that are helpful.
Hmm.
And so I have a pile of books here that I thought I would share with you as I go, a couple of my favorite
Yes,
books.
please,
Okay.
please.
So the first one is What Got You Here Won't Get You There, Marshall
Right,
Goldsmith. So that one is so useful in terms of, anybody who's stepping into new roles,
right,
and you think about, especially if you're moving from an independent contributor to a leader,
right.
or you're moving from a leader of a small group to a large group. So those kind of things, that's a framework. The other framework that I think is really useful when you're going into a new environment is The First 90 Days, Michael
Right.
Watkins.
Nice.
Okay. And
Right,
I use that framework 30, 60, 90 days every time I go into a new role. And it
right.
just helps ground you in what's important, who do you need to talk to, what do you need to learn, how do you need to operate. And that
Mhm.
usually that means a lot of listening and not a lot of acting in the first bit of it. And so I think those tools help with the resilience, right? So you have the
Mhm.
curiosity plus some of those tools, I think is really, really helpful.
Now, interesting that 90 days. I had been giving opportunity for more than 90 days in most cases in business operation systems. Could be for a person, could be for a project, could be for a new initiative.
Yeah.
And one of my colleagues, she said, "Well, no, I only give 90 days. Anything anything new,
Yeah.
whether it works or not, I'm going to give it 90 days." I think she was right, and I thought to myself, okay, this is something I had. Sometimes I feel I get my feelings in the way, and
Yeah.
as a result, it gets dragged on. And without you even knowing, you have done something that you don't have a better ROI or something or an interest for years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So 90
Yeah,
days
and
is a
it's
good,
interesting.
good,
Yeah. And like the world is so complicated and
right.
like we're trying all these new things. It's moving so fast. And that's why I find frameworks are useful, right? They can guide you. They give you a few guardrails, but not box you in, right?
Right.
And I think sometimes that's just it's helpful. Tools of the trade.
Right. Right. And right now, especially these days, we are living in the age of AI. Economies and workplaces are being reshaped at a pace that we've never seen before. It's a truly unprecedented socio-economic shift, in my
Hmm.
opinion. There's a corporate bloodbath out there.
Yeah.
So many layoffs. I think Verizon laid off 13,000 people
Yep.
yesterday.
And yesterday, Bell
After
laid off people, right?
Right. And AI is accelerating disruption. What does resilience mean, and what advice would you give to aspiring professional, especially you are in the education now?
Hmm.
And I'm sure there is a lot of anxiety
Yeah.
among students, undergrad or graduate students. Advice would you be giving to these professionals who are trying to build a meaningful career?
Hmm. Yep. So I'm going to start with the layoffs piece, and then I'm going to come before layoffs.
Right.
I think layoffs are so common now, and I realize this is hard for younger people earlier in their career, but you have to not take it personally,
Yeah.
right? Because, like, when they're doing a mass layoff, that is an economic decision that is not about performance. And, the first time it happens, obviously you take it very personally, but I think that's something to recognize. If I think about 15, 20 years ago, I was looking at somebody's resume and, they left a company not of their own accord. You're thinking it's performance. Now it is common for it to be economic purely. And so I think that's something in terms of building that resilience and building that, a bit of a thick skin. So there's that. But also, as you think about like what's important as skills in today's world. Back to my point around curiosity, I think curiosity is so important, and the ability to ask good questions. That is critical for me now as a board director, but I think it's important throughout your career because it's
Mhm.
going to help you do your job better. It's going to help you make your part of the business better, and is going to help with your personal brand of people realizing that you are intentionally trying to learn and make things better. I think that is great. And AI can help you with that, but it can't replace your curiosity, right?
Yes.
It could fuel it. It can fuel your, satiating your curiosity. But the next thing I would say is integrated thinking. That is something I consider one of my superpowers is how do you take various different things that are going on and see how they connect together?
Mhm.
Um, One of my favorite strategic thinkers, and we'll come back to that later, is Roger Martin.
Mhm.
Even though he was the dean of Rotman, before he was the dean of Rotman, he was an amazing strategist
Mhm.
with the Monitor Group and did a bunch of work at Harvard. And he's got a concept that he calls a set of strategic choices. And
Mhm.
in there, you're really integrating your thinking across things. We can come back at that later, but I think being able to think in an integrated way is pretty important. And AI is going to give you a ton of information, and then you have to integrate it into what you're trying to do, right? So I think that's important.
Mhm.
The next thing I would say is continuous learning,
Right.
right? Things are moving so fast. You can't just sit back and wait for it to get figured out and then you'll adopt. You have
Right.
to keep learning and trying yourself. And then finally, I would say, like the courage to do new things. And I've been fortunate in my career, have many very interesting opportunities presented to me.
Right.
And I've never said no. I had the opportunity to go and work in the UK and run our business there for a couple of years.
Mhm.
Amazing. Now, some people wouldn't do that. And for very good reasons. As I said before, I grew up in a family where we moved every 2 years because
Mhm.
it was a really great opportunity for my dad's career and for the family.
Mhm.
So I think, that courage to do new things is important as well.
And you were talking about you, you talked about your family upbringing. That is important to me as well. I'm on the move all the time, and my daughter sometimes she would come to my room and would not come in front of the camera. If she really feels like she would come on camera, she doesn't
Yeah,
really care. But
that's great.
she would ask two questions: "Are you in a meeting? Are you stressed? Because I have
Ah,
to tell you something."
interesting.
So those two things she would ask, and when she wants maybe the TV to put on or internet to be put on, I have a schedule running obviously to minimize device users, and they've kind of learned through it. And sometimes she would say, I'm more important than your business. So I want to talk to you right now. But at least having that thought process that we have a business to run,
Hmm.
we are under pressure, trying to make something that do be a little bit more above average in life. You gotta work hard and instilling that uh, instilling that dynamic nature, willing to change, willing to accept challenges is critical, in my opinion. I mean, decades after you are still talking about it, that tells me whatever you instill in your children's mind from the get-go is critical.
It's
And we
critical.
travel, we take them across the world, and
Yeah.
then sometimes we don't have the best facilities, and
Hmm.
sometimes we take trains, sometimes we don't have the meals at the set time. So so those things I find really helped me and the children to have that understanding. I hope that'll help my
So
children in
true.
the long term.
Yeah, that agility, right? That
Yes,
ability to pivot and adapt is so important. And I think you're right. So much of it is foundational in terms
yes,
of your upbringing, and then you bring that with you. Like it just becomes part of your DNA, and you bring that with you as you go into new adventures.
right. And I've been talking to a few, or rather, I've been mentoring and guest speaking at few places, universities and colleges. And what most students ask is, how do I prepare? And you answered, gave a lot of insight into that. In summary, you want anyone to be, whether you're a subject matter expert in, let's say, software development or research or marketing, sales, you want them to be multidisciplinary.
It's so interesting. I think what I want people to be is not so much, I'm going to call it the hard skills anymore.
Right.
Everybody can learn the hard skills, and there's so many tools to be able to do that.
Yeah.
The soft skills are so important. I teach a leadership course in the executive MBA program at Schulich. And I say to folks, the hard skills might get you in the door, but it is the
Right.
soft skills that are going to get you up the ladder. And I think that is really, really important. So young people work on your soft skills as well as your hard skills. And that may mean, volunteering to be in group projects at work.
Yeah.
You get to learn leading through influence by doing that, right? Like you
Right.
get to jump into new settings, new environments, new teammates, all that kind of stuff is foundational. And I think those are the kind of things AI is not going to give you, right? The expertise in a particular field or function is not going to give you. It's going to give you background to help you as you integrate your thinking,
Mhm.
but it's those soft skills, I think, that will really propel people in this day and age.
Mhm. Thank you for that. And you've been a digital transformation leader for decades. And as I mentioned before, you have been in digital transformation before the word became a buzzword. And AI is the next phase of digital transformation, but at an exponential speed. Automation, economic pressure is there as well. I think due to the remnants of the post-pandemic economic challenges. But as per a recent MIT study, 95% of the AI pilots seem to fail. So I
Hmm.
want to draw some parallels from your experience being a digital transformation leader. What are the similarities? Are companies still repeating old mistakes? Are they looking at technology first before
Hmm.
people? What's the culture and leadership and alignment needs to be successfully, whether it's AI transformation or it could be the next big thing, we don't know what that
Yep.
is.
Yep.
What really need to from the team's perspective and leadership perspective and strategy perspective, what should they do?
So interesting. It's a very insightful question because I think there are some examples of we're just making the same mistakes all over again.
Yeah.
Uh, when I think about this time, and uh, I was deep in it during the late 90s, early 2000s, right in the middle of the dot-com bubble and bust.
Yeah.
Then, as now, people claim to be experts. And in the very early days, nobody's an expert. We are all
Yes.
learning,
Yes.
right? And that is very much true right now. The important thing is how you can pull from other experiences and draw the parallels.
Yeah.
Right. So when we were building Harlequin out in a big way digitally, e-commerce, we had online community way before Facebook and everything even existed, all kinds of really great stuff. And we worked with a company out of San Francisco to help us build all of this. And they
Mhm.
thought they were the experts of everything. We
Right.
had already 25 years of direct to consumer marketing, right?
Right.
Building a relationship with our customers. That was what was important. The technology is just how you serve it up, right? And
Right.
I think that similar today is very grounded in why are you doing what you're doing? I love Simon Sinek, Start With Why. And I think that is really important because a lot of what is going on today is mass experimentation for the sake of experimenting on AI so you don't get left behind. And I think it's important to experiment, but ground it in why are you trying to do these things? What are you trying to get out of it? And I think companies are now starting to pull back a little bit and be a bit more strategically focused in that regard. So I think that's important. The things that are, I think, the same also in a good way is you have to have the curiosity to learn in these
Yes.
new environments. You have to jump in and experiment yourself. Like we did some really cool early days AI stuff in like 2020 to 2023 at Tourstar. ChatGPT really came out to the consumer in December 2022. I was in it right away. Right.
Right.
And so, like, get in there early and really just experiment yourself. The best way to learn is to have to do it and then have to show somebody else. Right. So, which I'll come back to. I want to get to Stephen Covey's 7 Habits in a minute.
Yes, please.
So I think that's the same. The other thing that is critical is senior level support. And I had this go south in an important transformation at Tourstar. And as a result, I would never again lead a major transformation initiative without the senior sponsor actually really sponsoring it and being in it.
That is
And so I
correct.
think that's a really important learning that is still happening today, but is critical.
Yeah. Yeah. When you talked about doing your Harlequin e-commerce implementation a couple of decades ago, that reminds me how I got into e-commerce industry. 2009, I had a little bit of technology background. I tried and tested and things for a few years during my high school time. I did not have any knowledge on e-commerce. I was kind of thrown into the job, but
Yeah.
it was a great opportunity for me. Quite my first corporate job in Canada. And I thought, okay, I don't know anything and I don't know who to turn to. And I was seeking help from people, looking into the support portals, communities, online communities. But something that I did not know, Pam, was that others also didn't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you feel like, oh, I don't know this thing. And what do I do? Am I going to survive this job?
Yeah.
Am I going to be able to make a change to my client or at the time employer? So something I didn't realize was that nobody knew.
Yeah.
It was, you lose your confidence sometimes because you think too much about it, and you may feel like that you are not enough, which
Mhm.
is probably the worst feeling for you
Right.
to
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same with AI.
Hmm.
Nobody knows
Exactly.
in the corporate environment, in the business
Hmm.
environment, at least most don't know
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
enough. And it
Yeah.
changes
Oh,
at an astronomical speed.
that was going to be my last point. And before I make that point, I think what's important about AI is that AI itself it's decades old. And the machine learning aspect to things is, I think, well founded, well structured, and it's like bedded in now. It's the generative AI aspect that is
Yes.
the Wild West new frontier that we are all figuring out. And
Yeah.
so it's a good example of it grows over time, it stabilizes over time, but we are still in a new era where it is Wild West. And that the one difference between the digital transformation era and the AI transformation era is the speed at which change is happening,
Right.
right? Like every week there's something new. um, you know, a new platform or the existing platforms put out new versions, all of these capabilities. Every week there's something new. There is no way any human can keep up and be an expert. Just not.
Right, right. And I think you answered my next question as well. Transformation fatigue. It's real.
Mm,
I think we are all overwhelmed by the velocity of change. We are building in the middle of the storm, and how leaders can maintain momentum
yeah.
while bringing people and strategy together when change feels overwhelming. And then the other thing is, of course, because of the layoffs and economic challenges businesses and economies are facing, it could be daunting, especially for the team or staff. How can we overcome that? And you answered majority of it. Any further?
Yes, I do have another thought. The effectiveness of change, like most change these days, is underpinned by technology.
Mhm.
And people think that technology is the change. The human psychology and the human behavior is actually the change that you need to affect. And I think we lose sight of that. And so my next book, Leading Change by John Cotter.
Right,
Okay. This is my favorite framework for leading change.
right.
There's 8 steps to the process, really easily accessible. And one of the important aspects to it is early on, you need to find champions
Right.
who will not just be, the people up at the top leading the change from on high, the people in the weeds
Right.
who get it, right? And they become your champions. Another thing is you really have to, again, start with why, but focus on the what's in it for me with people.
Mhm,
And if
mhm.
people understand the context and they understand, the steps in the journey and how long it might take, I think that is um, more comforting to folks. The discomfort comes when, the unknowns are there. Like, why are we doing this? How's it going to work? What's it going to mean for me? Those
Mhm,
unknowns often make
mhm.
it uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And organizations stumble through that. Therefore, it takes longer and you have to retool. And that's when change fatigue really sets in, is
Mhm.
when, okay, here's the next change. And oh my God, we have to redo it. Right. So I think that's a really important aspect of things is it really is about people.
Yeah.
It is not so much about the technology. Yes, the technology is going to help us. And
Yeah.
it's interesting at Girl Guides. So I chair the board of Girl Guides, and we're going through a significant digital transformation. We're just starting the process. And I keep saying to our CTO, this is all about communication.
Right.
And this is, yes, the technology needs to be totally overhauled, but success will come through the communication.
Yeah. Something I strongly believe is AI is here to amplify human capability as opposed to replace
Mm-hmm.
humans. It is
Mm-hmm.
here to replace tasks,
Yep.
though, so humans can focus on things that matter the most.
Yes, it's so true. And there's a through line through everything we've been talking about was it is all about people, right? We
Yes.
talked about that with like hard skills versus soft skills.
Yes.
We talk about it here with change in terms of like what's in it for me. We talk about it with AI in terms of AI can be your partner, it can be your assistant, but it is not your replacement in many ways.
Mhm,
For lower level repetitive tasks, different story. But,
mhm.
in leading organizations, it is still very, very people centric.
That is right. You have always balanced data and strategy and intuition as a business leader. In current state of the economy and environment, we could easily be over reliant on technology at times.
Hmm.
How do you combine your experience and intuition uh, along with the machine based outputs when making high stake decisions?
Hmm. Hmm. I think there's the world of, data informed, right? So making the decisions that are data informed, but it comes back to like the word I use most often with the team at Girl Guides is the why, right? So
Right,
back to Simon Sinek, start with why,
right,
and the data will help you understand the what's and the hows,
right.
but the why is really a critical starting point. And so then that comes back to Roger Martin's framework, which is
Mm.
around, and what I love about his framework is he says that strategy is this interconnected set of choices. One of the most important choices you make in strategy is to choose not to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so data can help you drive that as well. But I want to come back as well to one of my favorite frameworks.
Yeah.
So now I'm bringing out Stephen Covey's 7 Habits.
Yes.
Okay. And in there, he has a wonderful framework around the kinds of decisions that leaders should make. And so it's a 2x2 framework, MBAs, et cetera. We love a good 2x2 framework.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really around what's important and what's urgent. And what happens is when we're lower in organizations, we tend to work on the things that are not as important,
Mm-hmm.
whether they're urgent or not.
Mm-hmm.
And as we grow as leaders, we develop judgment,
Mm-hmm.
partly through data can inform us, partly through our experiences. And we need to make sure that what we're working on is important. Some things will be urgent and important.
Right.
Fantastic. Do those right now. The most important things to work on are actually the urgent but not important. That's the future,
Right.
right? And that may or may not be data informed.
Right.
It may be based on, to your point, like all of your expertise and all of your experiences that you've developed over time,
Mm-hmm.
collectively, you individually as a group. And one of the things I say to young leaders is you have to find a way to make sure you make time to work on the important, but not urgent, because
Right.
that is the future. And so it's just an interesting framework
Yeah.
to help you in your strategic decision making.
Yeah.
So yes, data informed, but I also think like frameworks are just so helpful to guide.
Right. Especially nowadays with the velocity of the change and the pressure, social, economic pressure, you tend to focus on what's most urgent. Sometimes it may not even be important.
Yeah.
And you often forget. That reminds me that something I had to do. Just like, I haven't done it. It's so important, but not urgent. If I don't do that, what do I do? How the Q2 looks like and Q3 looks like. These are the things that business owners often often overlook because they are so busy doing the day to day.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think that's where, you have people around you, teams, who can work on some of those things and then bring them to you, right? So as long as within the organization, you're covering off these things. The other thing that I end up doing, I work best to deadlines. So sometimes I have to fake out deadlines for myself on the important but not urgent. And it was easier when I was working in an organization and I would set a meeting with my boss
Yeah,
where I was going to come and bring that, right? And so then I work to a deadline really well, so I'll make that happen.
that's right.
So
Yeah.
sometimes you have to, provide yourself with little tricks to get to that important but not urgent.
It's interesting. Wherever you are in your career, whether you are junior or senior or executive like yourself, it's interesting that the business problems are they're the same,
Right?
and the challenges, they are human challenges end of the day.
I was just going to say that it's all human stuff, right? Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I,
And
I sorry,
no, I was going to say, and as you go through your career, you start to see that. You start to see the patterns. You start to understand how to work in that kind of context.
right.
And, hopefully we get better at it as we grow.
That is right. That is right. Working on deadlines, that's critical. Because we sometimes keep forgetting. I think that's intertwined with the nature of I like to try too many things at once and not anything gets done. But if I set a certain deadline, for example, if I have to go out for dinner with my wife and we don't want to miss out on the reservation and you have a deadline.
Yep.
On Friday, 5:00, I want to sign off, and Friday I take time off for sure, whatever I do. And the last 1 hour, I can get a lot of things done because I have to get it out of the system, so I don't have to think about it over the weekend.
Yeah.
Moving on to your experience with Boardroom and how you navigate it, I want to talk about AI and AI readiness and digital fluency with emotional intelligence and adaptability. And from what you're seeing in boardrooms today, what capabilities will the next generation of leaders, especially women, I have two daughters and I
Hmm.
can share this knowledge with them as well, need in an AI-driven future?
So it's interesting. I thought about this question in a couple of different ways. Again, there's a through line from what we have been talking about before. So many of these capabilities are the human centered things, right? Those soft skills, the ability to work well with teams and collaborate and bring people together to drive towards something. I think that is very important. And partly it's, um, can you be like very organized and effective? Fine. But partly it is again, back to the curiosity.
Hmm.
I think that will be so important to leaders in the future, today and tomorrow. Tying that to the boardroom, one of the things that my second superpower, I mentioned the other one before about integrating, connecting the dots. My second one is asking really good questions. And in the boardroom, that is very much your job as a director, but it applies everywhere. And it's interesting. One of my former CEOs used to say that I have a way of making people want to eat their broccoli. And what he meant by that is I can ask a really tough question in a really supportive way.
Hmm.
And that is important in this day and age as things change so quickly. We
Hmm.
need to have that judgment. We need to have the critical thinking to figure out, like, is this important? And do we
Hmm.
need to put energy and resources behind it?
Hmm.
Can we wait a little bit? Do we need to get ahead of folks? All
Hmm.
those kinds of things. So having that ability to integrate and think critically, but also having the ability to help everybody else do that in
Hmm.
a constructive and supportive way, I think really important. And
Hmm.
that, I mean, you can get some tips from AI in helping you do that,
Yeah.
but that is you interacting with others. So I think that's really important. And then I just want to talk for a minute about women in leaders
Yeah.
because it's something I'm passionate about. And
Yeah.
it's interesting because I really thought we were much further along in the world than perhaps we are. And I think in the last couple of years, some things have sort of arisen that make me go, holy cow, women are not as far along as we should be. Variety of reasons for that, many of which are outside of our control. But there are
Hmm.
a couple of things that are inside our control that if I look back myself, I wish I'd done differently.
Hmm.
I have always put my head down and done great work.
Hmm.
And I expect the work to speak for itself.
To be
That
recognized.
Yeah, and that does not always happen that the work speaks for
Right.
itself.
Right.
You need mentors, you need sponsors,
Right.
and sometimes you need to just own your success and tell people about it.
Right.
Because honestly, boys are better at that than girls.
Okay.
And so I think that's really important. And that to me is like learning the hard way. And so whenever I talk to young women leaders now, I'm always impressing that upon them, which is work hard, but like own your success.
And show your
And
work.
yeah, really, like, just be proud of it and make sure that other people know that you did that, right? And I think there's still a little bit of a boys club out there in organizations, and, you've gotta break through that.
That's really interesting. I'm actually going to pass that over to my children. That advice, pass that advice over to my children. Um, I never thought of that way. Um, I, yeah, I'm like, okay, it's equal out there. I just go and win the world, but there are practical challenges still,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
some of them could be biological differences. So you have to overcome certain differences
Yeah,
and
yeah,
stand up for yourself
yeah.
and
And it's so
show
interesting
your work.
because yeah, show your work. I started my career at Harlequin, as we talked about. Our audience is women. The majority of the staff at Harlequin, women. Lots of men there, but the majority are women. And so and again, family background, girls can do anything boys that can do. So like, I go into this world thinking everything, we're all equal, right? Then I moved to
Mhm.
the media side of the business, and 16, 17 years into my career was the first time I'd ever been in a meeting where I was the only woman in the room. And like, it's different. It's a different dynamic, all of
Yeah,
that. And so that's when you start to realize, oh, maybe we're not all equal. And
yeah.
so, that was eye-opening for sure.
Hmm. Really interesting.
Yeah.
I have a kind of a sub question to our previous note, Pam. Canadian companies tend to be cautious.
Mm.
Does it help or hinder leaders? What do you think?
I think that is so interesting. And in the world of technology right now, like if you look at partly it's cautious, and partly there's regulation that exists in Canada that is different than other countries. Our biggest companies are our banks, and they are highly regulated. So I think that sort of aura kind of fills over everyone. You think about the mining companies, like talk about highly speculative. They're probably not as cautious. They're much more mindful now about sustainability and environmental concerns and the community stakeholders. I'm not suggesting they don't, but they're probably a bit more on the innovative side of things and that. But if you compare the Canadian companies to, and many companies around the world, to the US companies, right? You think about like the top
Mhm,
5 valued companies in the world, US companies,
mhm.
um, technology companies that thrive on innovation, you know, in the words of Mark Zuckerberg, move fast and break things, less regulation involved, take more risks. And the results are seen in the market caps, right? So I think that it's a very interesting thing. But what does that mean for people inside these companies is interesting. And I think Canada's at an interesting crossroads where we have to figure out how to balance the environment that we exist in and how do we actually become more innovative, a bit more risk taking so that we can stand on our own. It's a very interesting time.
Thank you for that. And I find that you read a lot and you utilize certain framework, academic framework, and something I don't see often among business leaders. They do read sometimes, rarely hear the word framework. And you being a business executive and for decades, and it's really interesting that you are still referring to the foundational frameworks. Stephen Covey, everyone has pretty much in the business world has read it, and they're
Yeah.
still utilizing that. And Roger Martin's framework. In fact, I wanted to ask you as well, where can I find that? Uh,
Yes.
and
Okay. So
it's so
I,
interesting
I,
that you do that,
mhm.
Pam.
Yeah.
And what advice can you give me?
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's so interesting. So this is how my mind works. I am like, as soon as I discovered Roger Martin, I realized I could put a label to how my mind works, which is I'm an integrated thinker.
Right,
And so I integrate all these things together, and a framework is a really great way to do that.
right,
I also find they're easy to remember,
right,
right? And so, we've talked about like at least 3 today.
right,
And it's like they become my toolkit, right?
right,
And so, I was facilitating a brainstorming session for a not-for-profit up in Halliburton last week. Pulled out some of my frameworks, right? And it just because they're also like so well thought out by these people, they're easy to communicate, they're easy to understand,
right,
and relatively easy to execute against.
right,
So I think that's why I tend to use these frameworks. So for Roger Martin, he has 2 things. He's got a book called Playing to Win, which is over in my bookcase, but I forgot to bring it over, so I don't want to like leave the frame to go get it.
right.
But he has a book called Playing to Win. He also has a Substack blog that he's in the process of basically like reevaluating and updating all of his thinking on these strategic choices cascade approach. And it's such a simple, like when I help somebody with strategy, his framework is very much about kind of where to play, how to win. So you set, what is your winning aspiration? Where should we play to do that? How do we win? What are the capabilities and the systems that we need to make that happen? And you move
Mhm,
up and down those choices, sort of adjusting as you go. It's not
mhm,
necessarily, it's a real chicken and egg. Where do you start in the process? You can start
mhm,
anywhere in the process and work
mhm,
your way up and down. But if you're able to really explain to people, here's our winning aspiration, here's where we want to play, and here's how we think we can win, very
mhm,
interesting. And
mhm.
simple questions to help get at a strategy, you could put your strategy on a page with that, right? And it doesn't need
Right.
to be a 100-page deck.
Thank you so much for that wisdom. I really appreciate it. With my business, I use what I learn here and there, but not necessarily following a framework. I think it's critical that there's so many things to do. There's
Yeah.
so many things that you can do, but you need to know what you need to do.
Yes. And you need to know what to choose not to do.
Exactly. You need to know what you choose not to do.
Yeah.
I'm so in alignment with that. And one of my friends, also out of the US, senior developer, software architect, slash, he's an innovator himself as well. He said, um, it's not about knowing what you to say yes to. You should also need to know what you should say no to.
So true. I listened to a podcast called The Knowledge Project. So
Yeah,
Shane Parrish, and a good Canadian. He was either in CSIS or he was in CIA. Even though he's Canadian, I feel like he was in CIA because he keeps calling it the 3-letter.
right.
Um, and he had on his podcast one episode, Toby Lutke, who's the CEO and
Right.
founder of Shopify. And the
Yeah.
thing that Toby said, like, it was an hour and a half conversation. The thing I remember he said is my most important job is to say no. I say no to things that shouldn't happen because if they do happen, if I say yes, those resources are gone. They're going to something that is not as important as something else. So my job is very much to say no. And I thought that was so, as an innovator, I thought that was a really
Yes.
interesting framing.
Interesting. Thank you. What does the future hold for Pam Laycock? What legacy you want to leave?
Yeah. So I think for me, back to frameworks, right? I really am finding like good energy inside my purposeful portfolio of joy. So I continue to do that. I would like to serve on one more board, a corporate board. So I'm working towards that. But I think for me, it's, I have found what energizes me. My whole sort of purpose right now is to help people be amazing. And
Mhm.
so everything I do ties to that somehow. And I think that's important. Find what energizes you, find what you're willing to work hard for. And we talked about this earlier about young people. If you want to rise up, you have to work hard. And there's a real conversation right now about, um, do young people want to put in the effort? Do they want more work-life balance? And I'm not begrudging anybody that. But if you do want to rise, you have to work harder than you probably have been.
Yeah.
And you have to work on the right things. But I think that's interesting in terms of, that need to work hard. So therefore, you want to make sure you're working on things that energize you. And I think that's really, really important. So for me, I just keep being curious. I keep learning, and I expect I will keep doing new things.
Thank you, Pam, so much for sharing your wisdom today. It was amazing amount of knowledge and different uh, strategies and thought processes that you are trying, sharing with us to instill in our professional journey. And your clarity, perspectives are really valuable, and learning from your decades-long executive leadership is truly invaluable. And I'm not only for experienced leaders, but for next generation who are trying to find their way. This conversation is going to be really important. And thank you so much for spending time with us. Really appreciate it. And I know our listeners will take so much away from your insights. And everyone listening, thank you for spending time with us. And we are signing off from Sixcast in Toronto. See you next time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Sixcast. We'd love to connect with you, so feel free to comment or reshare. You can also find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn at Six Senses. Bye for now.